Hi there, welcome to my YouTube channel Dhyani Classes. If you are watching my video for the first time, do subscribe my channel, hit the bell icon so that I get notified whenever new video will be uploaded. So in today's video, we will cover the second part of the chapter Lost Spring, written by Anish Jung from class 12 CBSE. So let's get started. So in the first part of the chapter, we have seen Sahib and other rag pickers had been living in Simapuri illegally with their families for more than 30 years without an identity, and they have a ration cards in order to buy grains at a very low price, and says food is more important for survival than an identity. So let's look at the second part of the chapter now. If at the end of the day we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields that gave us no grain, say a group of women in tattered saris when I ask them why they left their beautiful land of green fields and river. So here the narrator asked a question from a group of women who were wearing torn saris and said, why did you leave your beautiful green fields and river in Dhaka? So then one of them replied, we would rather live here than in the fields that give us no grains. That means they are very much satisfied and happy, at least that we have something to cook because of the ration cards, and they are able to feed their families, especially children, and go to sleep without an empty stomach, and says it is far better than the land which does not give us anything to feed because due to storm they have lost everything in Dhaka, Bangladesh. So this was the only reason why they had left Dhaka and landed in Simapuri. So tattered saris means torn or old saris. Wherever they find food, they pitch their tents that becomes transit homes. So here the author is saying that these people roams across the city, and wherever they find food or source of income, they pitched their tents. That means they build their temporary home by using tents, and that become transit home. So what do you mean by transit homes? That means a temporary tent house that can shift from one place to another place, and says children grow up in them, becoming partners in survival. That means along with the elders in those transit homes, children also live with them and grow with them. And survival in Simapuri means rag picking. So according to them, if they are living in Simapuri, they have to do rag picking. So children who are living along with their parents support them in leading life. So children also play their part in rag picking or other valuable things from heap of rags, and then sell it and come back home with some money. So this is how the children become partners in survival in Simapuri. Through the years, it has acquired the proportions of a fine art. Garbage to them is gold. So here he is saying that for many years, people had been doing rag picking for many years, and rag picking become a fine art. So here the author is saying that for many years, they have been doing rag picking, and rag picking became a fine art for them. So there are many people who became skillful in rag picking, and they are able to find something valuable, and says one should be very skillful to do rag picking. Then one can find some stuff from the heap of the garbage, and says garbage to them is gold. That means a dump of waste material is gold for them. It is their daily bread, a roof over their heads, even if it is leaking roof. So here the author is saying that it is their daily bread. That means pieces of metal and other valuable stuff in garbage is their source of income or source of food, and says roof over their head is even leaking. So we can understand what thing forced them to go outside and look for a heap of garbage. So they are not worried about the leaking roof because at least they have something in the name of shelter to take some rest. For a children, it is even more. So here the narrator is saying that, but for a children, it is even more than. That means the children who live in Simapuri, a heap of garbage were more than a means of survival. Further she says, I sometimes find a rupee, even a 10 rupee note. Sahib says, his eyes lighting up. So here Anish Jung spoke something to Sahib, a garbage picker, and he says in a happy mood that sometimes when he found rupee in the heap of garbage, and even sometime a 10 rupee note, and this 10 rupee note means a lot to him. When you can find a silver coin in a heap of garbage, you don't stop scrounging, for there is hope of finding more. So here the author is saying that these rag pickers always hope for finding some rupee or any other valuable stuff which help them to earn good money, and says if in case one finds money in garbage like 10 rupees note, he keeps on searching and hoping to find more. So scrounging refers to looking for something eagerly. It seems that for children, garbage has meaning different from what it means to their parents. So here the author is saying that picking garbage means a lot to them, but for children, garbage has a different meaning, but for parents it is completely different, and says for the children it is wrapped in wonder, for the elders it is means of survival. That means for children, rag picking is just going outside and having fun and picking up valuable stuffs from the heap of the garbage and come back home, because they don't know rag picking is their daily bread. But on the other hand, for elders it is a means of survival. That means rag picking is the only way to earn money, then get food and grains. So wrapped means to feel happy or delighted. One winter morning, I see Sahib standing by the fence gate of the neighborhood club, watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. So one fine winter morning, the author saw Sahib and he was standing by the gate of the neighborhood. And why Sahib was standing there? Because he was watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. That means he was watching two young men who were dressed in white and they were playing tennis. So fence refers to railing or barrier. Further, she says, I like the game, he hums, content to watch it standing behind the fence. So here Sahib said he liked the game. That means he wanted to play tennis and he liked the game while standing behind the gate, and continue watching how they were playing tennis, and says, I go inside when no one is around, he admits. That means he told the narrator that I will go inside when nobody is there, because he liked this game. So he wanted to go tennis court, and says the gatekeeper lets me use the swing. That means the gatekeeper or security guard allowed him to go inside, played with him swing. Further, the narrator is saying Sahib too is wearing tennis shoes that looked strange over his discolored shirt and shorts. So here she saw this boy Sahib and he was also wearing tennis shoes, and his shoes was very strange and old fashioned with his discolored shirt and shorts. Someone gave them to me, he says in the manner of an explanation. So when she asked him, where did you get these pairs of shoes? Then he replied somebody had donated him that pair of shoes. Further, she says the fact that they are discarded shoes of some rich boy who perhaps refused to wear them because of a hole in one of them does not bother him. So here the author is saying that the fact that they are discarded shoes of rich boy, that means that pair of shoes have been thrown away by a rich boy because it was useless for him, and says who perhaps refused to wear them because of a hole in one of them. So a rich boy threw them away because there was a hole in one of shoes. But for Sahib, it does not bother him. That means defective pair of shoes means a lot to him, and hole in one of them doesn't bother Sahib. So discarded means rejected or faulty. For one who has walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true. So the author is saying that a boy who walked barefoot and to wear a shoe with a hole in it like a dream come true. But the game he is watching so intently is out of his reach. So as Sai was watching a tennis game while standing outside the gate very attentively, because he was just a rag picker and there was no chance for him to go inside the gate and play along with the men who were wearing white clothes and playing tennis. So intently means closely and attentively. Further, she says this morning Sahib is on his way to the milk booth. So here the narrator is saying that one morning she saw Sahib and he was going to milk booth, and says in his hand is a steel canister. That means while going to the milk booth he was carrying a steel canister to get milk from the booth. I now work in a tea stall down the road, he says, pointing in the distance. So when the narrator spoke to him where he was going, so he told him that now I am working in a tea stall down the road, and he showed the tea stall by pointing the distance on the road, and at that time he was not doing rag picking. And further he says, I am paid 800 rupees and all my meals. So Sahib also told her that he gets 800 rupees as a salary along with the meal without paying anything for the food. And then the author asked him a question that Does he like the job? I ask. His face, I see, has lost the carefree look. So here the author asked him a question that are you happy with this job while staring at his face. So immediately she noticed that he was not happy at all with this job. The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag he would carry so lightly over his shoulder. So here she is saying that as he was not looking happy at all, and it seems a carrying steel canister heavier for him as compared to the plastic bag, because when he was doing rag picking he used to carry a very light plastic bag to get some waste material. So why is the narrator saying like this? Because the bag was his. The canister belongs to the man who owns the tea shop. So now we can understand why he was not happy and why this milk container seems heavier than the plastic bag, because when he was doing rag picking he was his own boss and he used to do rag picking without any responsibility, and now the container is carrying belongs to his master and he was working for his master and he was burdened with responsibilities. So in this way, author is saying that steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag and says Sahib is no longer his own master. That means he left rag picking and now he is no more his own master, because he has to work for somebody and follow all the orders such as coming on time at the tea stall or cleaning dishes and all. So this was the first part of this story where the author narrate a story about a rag picker named Sahib. Now we will read the second part of this story, that is the story of bangle makers named Mukesh, and he wanted to drive a car and also wanted to be a motor mechanic. Mukesh insists on being his own master. I will be a motor mechanic, he announces. So here the author is saying that a boy named Mukesh was very confident and said, I learned something to be my own boss and it will be a motor mechanic. That means he wanted to become a motor mechanic. So in reply, author asked him a question that, do you know anything about cars? I asked. So she asked him, did he know anything about the car, or if he knew something about the car? I will learn to drive a car, he answers, looking straight into my eyes. So immediately Mukesh replied while looking straight into her eyes that yes, I will learn to drive a car very confidently. His dream looms like a mirage amidst the dust of streets that fill his own Firozabad, famous for its bangle. So here she says that he had a dream to drive a car or to be a motor mechanic, but it was just an illusion for him because it was very hard to find the place where he could learn motor mechanic, but yet he was certain that he will be a motor mechanic. So somehow he was unaware of his state of poverty, and he was living in a Firozabad at that time, and Firozabad is famous for making bangles. Every other family in Firozabad is engaged in making bangles. So here the author is saying that every family in Firozabad makes bangles, and making bangles is their daily bread. It is the center of India's glass blowing industry, where families have spent generations working around furnaces, welding glasses, making bangles for all the women in the land, it seems. So here the author is saying that it is the center of India's glass blowing industry. That means Firozabad known for bangle making, and there are many glass melting factories, and people have spent many years, including women and children, in working around furnaces and welding areas and making bangles. So furnaces refers to a forge or large heater that produce heat up to 1400 degrees Celsius and is used for molding bangles and hard metal things. Mukesh's family is among them. That means Mukesh's family was also involved in the profession of glass bangle making. None of them knew that it is illegal for children like him to work in the glass furnaces with high temperatures. So here she is saying that people who have worked in these factories, they were not aware of the law and brought their children to work around the high temperature furnaces, and they don't know the difference between legal and illegal and its consequences. So in order to earn money, they used to bring their children into bangle making profession. Further, she says in dingy cells without air and light that the law, if enforced, could get him and all those 20,000 children out of the hot furnaces where they slog their daylight hours and often losing the brightness of their eyes. So here the author is saying that the areas where large furnaces melting glasses were very hot and dark due to furnaces and without ventilation, and says that the law, if enforced, that means if law authorities such as court or local police would come into action, all those 20,000 children would rescue and bring out of the hot furnaces where they forced to work hard during the daytime and losing their brightness of their eyes because they keep looking at the burning fire and keep welding bangles. So this high temperature or high brightness can damage their eyesight permanently. Further, she says Mukesh's eyes beam as he volunteers to take me home, which he proudly say is being rebuilt. So here the author is saying that I met Mukesh in Firozabad and says Mukesh was very happy to take me to his home and said very proudly that his house is being renovated. We walked down sticking lanes choked with garbage, past homes that remain hovels with crumbling walls, wobbly doors, no windows, crowded with families of human and animals coexisting in a primeval state. So here the author is describing living place and Mukesh used to live in that place and says we walked down sticking lanes choked with garbage. That means lanes were very dirty and bad smelling with full of garbage spreading, and past homes that remains hovels with crumbling walls. That means she saw these houses were made of using tent and mud and walls were broken apart which can break down any time or any moment, and doors were very shaky and wobbly in a bad condition, and there were no windows in the house, and every house was full of crowd because in these homes animals and human being live together in a primeval state. He stops at the door of one such house, bangs a wobbly iron door with his foot and pushes it open. So here Mukesh brought the author to his house and says Mukesh stop in front of one such house with a wobbly door. That means the house has shaky doors made by iron, and then he hit it hard with his foot and opened it. We entered a half-built shack. So she reached the house and it was built half shack. That means it was built half and it was half built hut, and says in one part of it thatched with dead grass is a firewood stove over which sits a large vessel of sizzling spinach leaves. So here the author is saying that house has thatched with dead grass. That means half roof of the house was covered with dead grass, and inside of the house she saw a firewood stove was there and a large vessel of sizzling spinach leaf. That means on the firewood stove there was a large container and sizzling spinach leaf. That means somebody was cooking spinach leaf there. On the ground a large aluminium platters are more chopped vegetables. That means she also saw a large aluminium tray or plate on the ground, and in that more vegetables were cut. A frail young woman is cooking the evening meal for the whole family. So here the author is saying that there was a woman and she was very weak and cooking the evening meal for the entire family. So frail means feeble or weak. Through eyes filled with smoke she smiles. That means there was a smoke inside the house where this frail young woman was cooking meal, and her eyes were filled with smoke due to firewood, but she was looking very happy, and when she saw the author she started smiling. She is the wife of Mukesh's elder brother. So this woman was the wife of Mukesh's elder brother's wife. Not much older in years, she has begun to command respect as a Bahu, the daughter-in-law of the house, already in charge of three men, her husband Mukesh and their father. So the author is talking about the woman who was cooking food for the entire family, that she was not looking older and she has begun to command respect as a Bahu. That means she gets respect in the family as a daughter-in-law, and she was in charge of three men in the family such as her husband Mukesh and their father. That means she took care of three men in the family. When the older man enters, she gently withdraws behind the broken wall and brings her veil closer to her face. So here the author is saying that when the head of the family such as the father enters, then a daughter-in-law just behind the broken wall and tries to cover her face with the loose end of the sari. So veil refers to piece of cloth worn by woman. And why daughter-in-law covers her face? Just because of, as custom demands, daughter-in-law must veil their faces before male enters. That means it is their tradition to cover faces when an old male enters inside the house. Further, she says in this case the elder is an improvised wangle maker. So here she says the daughter-in-law covers faces when an old man such as Mukesh's father enters inside the house, and says his father was an improvised wangle maker. That means he was very experienced, old and poor wangle maker. So this is the end of the second part of the chapter. I hope you like the video. For more informative videos, do subscribe my channel. Hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever new video will be uploaded. So let's look at the third part of the chapter in my next video. So thank you so much for watching once again. Stay safe, stay healthy.